South Africa's retirement crisis is deepening, with many working into their 80s out of necessity, if their health allows and if they have the opportunity. I'm catching up with Nzwa Shoniwa, Managing Executive Sanlam Umbrella Solutions, about how government, employers, providers, and individuals can share responsibility to improve outcomes and why this issue must become a real priority. Welcome, Nzwa, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and morning to the listeners.
So let's set the scene. What does South Africa's retirement crisis look like, and why do you believe should we make planning around this a priority now more than ever?
Yeah, no, great. I think the stats are getting worse and worse, or should I say maybe that they're not improving. So, the latest stats coming out of ASISA, which is the Association of Savings in South Africa, is that less than 6% of South Africans are going to be able to retire comfortably. Well, that is in the single digits. And the way they look at that, it's based on the fact that most people will have a net replacement ratio of 70% or below. Now, what a net replacement ratio is basically, or simplistically, is whatever you have as your final lump sum when you get to retirement. How much of your final salary can you replace as a pension? So if you can replace 70% of your final salary to earn that as a pension, then you're going to retire comfortably. But what we are seeing from the stats that most people can only replace 25%, between 20 and 25% of their final salary as a pension. So that shows you just how badly, people have saved, or how badly people have preserved leading up to retirement. And what this basically talks to is that most people are either going to retire into poverty, or they can't afford to retire at all. And why we think that the time is now to act is that there's quite a few issues, but the one I would like to highlight is some of the stats that came out from our benchmark survey in 2024. Now, the survey indicated that more than 80% of respondents confirmed that they were currently experiencing financial stress, which had an impact on their mental health. Now, we know that South Africa ranks very poorly from a mental health perspective, and most of it is being driven by financial stress. So we've got this situation in South Africa where people work, experiencing financial stress affecting their mental health. When they get to retirement, the situation becomes even worse. So we're getting to this situation where, people that have reached retirement, older people, have got serious mental health issues, which are obviously affecting not only themselves, their families, but also society at large.
It really is a vicious circle, eh?
It
We don't
is.
plan. Sanlam talks about the fact that as a nation, we should share the responsibility to solve South Africa's retirement crisis. My question, where do we start? Who should be doing what? It has to be a collaboration, right?
100%. I agree with you. It's definitely not one group's burden to carry. If I look at the different stakeholders that participate in our industry, I think from a government perspective, government has, put in some policy that has helped not only us as providers, but also individuals, or should I say savers. And I think that enabling policy and for government to enforce compliance that will help. Two-pot is definitely a good initiative that forces preservation. A lot of the discussion around two-pot was, what people are going to be able to access, the 30,000 rands. But the other side of two-pot, which, as an industry, we all supported, was this retirement pot that people can no longer access going forward. So, from a preservation perspective, we believe that will make a big difference in the 10 to 15 years. You must remember that someone who started working post 1 September 2024, they would not have that vested pot that other people had and had access to. They only have the savings pot and the retirement pot that they can't access. So in 10 to 15 years, we should definitely see better preservation rates. So that's definitely a good initiative that'll make a difference. And the other stakeholder is definitely employers. I think the role that employers can play is looking at, the retirement fund game has changed. It's no longer just a person joining a company and saving on a monthly basis, and they get to retirement, they've got this lump sum, they buy a pension. It's now around prioritizing a holistic employee benefit offering. So that's what employers should do. They should continuously look for, product providers, products and solutions that cater to their workforce, to their members. And if you look, what a lot of umbrella funds are looking at, they're incorporating healthcare into the offering. And this is a trend post-COVID, where we understand that we need to help employers as best as we can from an absenteeism, presenteeism perspective by incorporating some sort of healthcare products. So that's a role that employers can play in terms of looking at the products, looking at us as providers as well. Now, one of the responses that also came out of our benchmark survey in 2024 was this need for quality professional financial advice. We surveyed pensioners, and in the top three, in terms of some of their regrets, what came up in the top three was an aspect around I should have looked at engaging a professional financial advisor earlier.
Really, that's great.
In my life.
To hear.
And what it speaks to is that as providers, how do we partner with employers to make sure that there's access to quality financial advice during the working period that as members get to retirement? So I think that's also a big one. And then again, I'll stay on the employer side. Another aspect that still exists in our industry is that when you join a company, we still have a lot of employers that have different contribution categories. So as an example, 5%, 7.5, 10%, 12.5. A lot of members will take the lowest contribution categories simply because they want to maximize their net take-home pay.
Yeah.
Now, again, as a responsible employer, should you be looking at scraping that lowest or the two lowest contribution categories, where you already force members to contribute at 10% and above? So that that's something that will definitely make a difference. And then maybe lastly, providers such as ourselves, Sanlam. I feel strongly that we need to innovate, educate, and offer accessible solutions. Retirement should not be complicated. It should be simple, where people understand the implications of the decisions they're making, the portfolios they're invested in, and how retirement works. And obviously, individuals themselves should take some sort of ownership. It's really small steps in terms of increasing your contribution rates and playing with the calculators that providers give you access to, so that you understand the implications of the decision that you make today. So to the comment you made when you asked the question, I think it's a collaborative effort across advisors, employers, government, as well as ourselves as product providers.
Yeah, thank you for layering that out. That was really insightful. And I want to ask a question related to the individual and the employer. I know that there has been some innovation in the sense of people do have more access to see what is going on in their retirement savings. It's apps, the access is most certainly easier, but do people make use of it? Have you seen an increased interest in making sure that I know what my status is in terms of my retirement savings?
Unfortunately not. So like you say, everyone now offers the app where people can engage with their retirement savings. When we track the people that are actually engaging with those digital tools, it's mostly people that are now getting closer to retirement, so 50 and above. Whereas, at that time when you get to age 50, retiring in 10 to 15 years, if your net replacement ratio, which I spoke about right at the beginning, if that's already at 20 to 25%, there's not much that you can do in those 10 years. So where we want to make a difference and make an impact is earlier in that working cycle, because you can make a difference with a 30-year-old if they get a picture of what it looks like, when they get to age 65. So unfortunately, we haven't been that successful in getting to the right crowd in terms of influencing their behavior.
Yeah.
But however, having said that, if I just look at our own umbrella fund, which has got about 330,000 active members, our sign up on our mobile app, that's increased to just under 50% in the last 5 years or so. Mostly driven by two-pot, because you can only access your two-pot savings, through the digital means. So that helps. But the next stage was is that we've gotten this sign up, we've gotten people to sign up onto our app. The next step is now that we've got them, they're signed up, they've got access. How do we then engage with them and improve their education and financial literacy so that they start engaging with, the tools that we have and also understanding the implications of, decreasing their savings or increasing their savings?
You started off by saying the picture looks fairly dismal, but is there an indication that there are a little bit of a upward trend on people starting to save earlier, or not really?
So I think there is. I think there is in the last 10 to 15 years. So
Okay.
one of the initiatives that's coming that's definitely helped is, auto enrollment. So auto enrollment within retirement funds is that when you join an employer, you have no option. You automatically have to contribute to the retirement fund. So that obviously means that there's better employee participation, which has increased retirement savings coverage. So that would mean more people have come into the retirement space or into the saving space. So that's one aspect. And then another aspect that's definitely improved, over the last 10 to 15 years is around education. We definitely feel that education of members has increased or improved, which we also feel quite strongly is the main tool that we have as providers to improve retirement outcomes. It's very difficult to influence people to increase their savings and reduce their net take-home salary in this environment.
Yeah.
So, education is definitely a big tool that we have. And we've seen more people engaging us in terms of some of the platforms that we have, which are pure educational financial literacy platforms. We've seen an uptick in the number of people that join those webinars.
How do we engage with the younger people? That is, I assume, one of the challenges that everyone is facing, right?
Yeah, that's I can tell you now, ourselves, our competitors, that is a discussion that's taking place across all product providers. And it's also because, remember, the environment has evolved. I spoke about the 330,000 members that we've got on the Sanlam Umbrella Fund. More than half of those are now millennials. So the way you engage with that crowd is very different from the way you engage with the older people. This is a crowd that's grown up where they've never not known having the internet.
Yeah.
So I think from our side, one of the aspects we are thinking about is we need to start by making it relevant. So retirement at age 65 to someone that's 25 years old feels like a lifetime away. So, how we frame it is very important. People need to understand it's around freedom of choice later in life if they make the right decisions today. People need to understand it also affords them that ability to say no to a job that they don't want later in life, simply because they've got enough. They don't have that pressure or that stress, to try and just chase a 20-15% salary increase and increase their lump sum pension. So it has to become more tangible. I think that's sort of the discussion that we're having internally. And then I think you sort of touched on this digital engagement, gamification, and goal-based planning tools, where people fully understand the implication of the decisions that they're making today on their future self. And I'll touch on our, Age of Confidence campaign. I think what we're trying to do there is to alert people that we've spoken a lot previously on this, only 6% will be able to retire comfortably and they'll have a net replacement ratio of 70% or less. We've changed it to say to people, actually, you're going to retire at age 80 or 85 because you won't have enough. So it's a different way of, portraying the same message and making it a bit more real. If you switch on the TV, most of the retirement adverts that you see is someone on a yacht, fishing or enjoying life, but that's not the reality. So we need to, show that different picture and try and get people to act quicker or act sooner, given the fact that, those younger people is where we can definitely make a difference and improve retirement outcomes in the future.
In your research, have you asked the question if you can tailor make your EB package? How important or how high up in the rankings is retirement savings part of the package?
So we had that in the 2023 and 2024 research. And the top 5, if I remember correctly, First one is still retirement savings. So
Okay.
we would have interviewed employers or your HR advisors, your payroll administrators. That is still retirement savings. What
Okay.
has come up post-COVID at number 2 is healthcare benefits. So that's also come up.
Okay.
And then in 2024, interestingly, which is also linked to the conversation we're having today, another one that's come up is financial advice within that top 5. So people are also asking for financial advice within their holistic employee benefits offering. And we found that quite interesting, which speaks to, how do we partner with employers, advisors, to make sure that people have got access not only to the retirement platform and a healthcare solution, but to quality financial advice as well.
Yeah, for me, that's music to my ears. That's my audience. That's the people that we speak to, and that's close to our hearts. And they are the people that makes the difference. I often wonder how people ask advice, like retirement and insurance advice, on a social media platform, on a Facebook group. And then luckily there are always a lot of people that say, talk to a financial advisor, and they suggest people, because how do you even still think that it's okay to ask advice on a social media group? But I think we are moving in the right direction from what I'm hearing from you.
It is amazing. I spoke earlier that in the 2024 research, we had retirees saying they wish they had spoken to a professional financial advisor earlier in life. Yeah. When we interviewed people that are working, the younger people, to find out whether they were seeking professional financial advice, to your point now, I think it was just over 35% that said that they were getting advice or seeking advice on Google, ChatGPT, YouTube as well. And for us, that just showed you, that there's this disconnect between the reality that sets in as you get to retirement or in retirement and what's actually happening right now for people that are working and younger. And how do we bridge that gap? How do we partner with both employers and advisors to make sure that, we move people away from these social media channels and get them closer to a professional financial advisor who knows what they're speaking about? But
right, because each person's situation is 100% unique. None of us have got the same situation as the person sitting next to us. So, middle income earners are often juggling debt, school fees, and day-to-day costs. How should the retirement conversation be framed for this group so that it resonates and feels achievable rather than just another financial pressure? And I think we've touched on that. Yeah. People may have to make decisions, right?
I agree. But interestingly on that question is, it's actually not just middle income earners. I think it's across all income bands that people are struggling. And we saw this through the two-part withdrawals. Obviously, we were tracking who's withdrawing, how much are they withdrawing, what's their income band, what's their level from in terms of where they work, what level are they or what grading are they. And it's across the board. We saw withdrawals across the board, your senior people, your high earners. So obviously, people are struggling across. And I think, to your question, telling someone to save more is very difficult when they're drowning in school fees and repayments, debt repayments, bond repayments. That's a difficult conversation to have. So I think from our side, we just need to focus on, the small, consistent contributions. Education comes in. People need to understand the tax benefits that are applicable if they save through a retirement vehicle. And that's a lot of information that's not out there. We've got that maximum of 27.5% capped at 350,000, where you get that tax benefit. And a lot of people don't understand that. They still save certain percentage within their retirement savings and then they save outside. Whereas the most tax efficient savings vehicle at the moment would be through your employer-sponsored retirement vehicle or pension fund. So but that's advice where, from our side, we need to partner with advisors, with consultants, so that message resonates with employers as well as employees. And that would help. It comes back again to that professional financial advice filtering through to both members as well as employers.
Yeah. What does success look like in 10 years if we get this right, realistically?
Yeah, what does a win look like? Ultimately, for us is if significantly more South Africans are on track to retire with dignity. And I use that word purposefully because that is what's happening is people work for a very long time or all their lives, and they get to retirement with 20 to 25% of their salary. They cannot live off that. So you then find that a lot of people are living off, their kids or family members, and their dignity has been taken away from them. You've been working for so long. So that's one aspect that we sort of look at into the future that would help. And another win for us is if people fully understand the products that they're buying into, as well as what retirement entails. I think if people can understand what the implications of today's decisions are on their future selves by taking away, by withdrawing from your savings pot for something that is not an emergency is you stealing from your future self. It's really those aspects that I think people need to understand. And then importantly, a win is, it would mean that retirement is no longer a privilege for the few. I think for us, it would mean that it's become a real possibility for many. Many South Africans now understand that they can get to age 65, retire comfortably and not have financial stress, which we now know for a fact is leading to most of the mental health issues that the country is facing.
Yeah. I want to ask a question that I probably know the answer for, but let me try and word it correctly. In your research, have you picked up the fact that there are still people that work on the mode of my kids will look after me? I am okay.
So we have. It's an unfortunate one, and from the interviews that we've been doing with the benchmark survey for the last 10 years or so, is that we would highlight to respondents, for example, that you are on track to retire with 20 to 25% of your final salary. And the question we would ask is whether they've got other savings outside of the retirement savings. But again, we already know the answer. Most South Africans only have their retirement savings as any savings that they have at their personal capacity. And we have received quite a few responses where people are not as worried as we would expect them to be, on the basis that they've invested into their child's education, and the expectation is that their children will look after them. Now, what's happened in South Africa, where this is not as straightforward as many people think. We all know that the unemployment rate has continuously been ticking up over the years. So we have a lot of graduates that are sitting unemployed without any source of income, still staying at home with the same parents that are tracking to retire with 20 to 25% of the salary. So this situation, to your first initial question around why we need to ring the alarm or why we should be concerned right now, is that we see it getting worse. That one salary that is looking after, and this is a post-COVID issue that we've also picked up in our research, that a lot of households became one salary households with one person having lost their job. Over and above that, that one salary was now looking after other individuals, extended family members. So having painted that picture, if you then get to retirement with a salary, with one salary in the household, looking after extended family, and then a child who now has gone through education and is also sitting at home, that puts a lot of strain on that income. And that obviously causes, other societal issues. So we do get that response, but unfortunately, in reality, it doesn't pan out that way.
Yeah, we hosted a AI in insurance conference, a webinar yesterday.
Okay.
And the reality is that AI is going to take even more jobs away from people. So that situation is not going to solve itself miraculously.
Not at all.
Very soon. So your message to the FAnews audience, who's obviously the advisors, the intermediaries, the guys that you and us speak to.
Yeah, so we run the Sanlam Umbrella Fund, which is a fully intermediated product. And I've spoken throughout this interview about the role that professional financial advice has to play in terms of improving members' retirement outcomes. I think we're all part of the solution. Brokers and advisors play a critical role in shaping client decisions. We believe that brokers and advisors are the trusted voice. So at the back of that, they've got the power to influence and drive real change. And this is why we keep talking about, can we partner much closer with brokers and advisors? And I guess, outside of the brokers and the advisors, there's also our competitors. Yeah, I think the comment there, from our side is to say, with the competitors, let's compete on value, but collaborate on purpose. We all understand how dire the situation is. We all have the same stats. So let's all play our role and make sure that it's a meaningful role that we're playing. If we raise the tide together, we lift all boats. And I think if we can include the millions of South Africans who are counting on us to do better and include them in this retirement space, I believe we can make a meaningful difference.
That is a powerful message. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. It's such a relevant topic, and I think we can talk for hours around that. And ultimately, it's all about educating the consumer. So thank you for the time, and all the best.
Thank you, Renette. Thank you for having me.